This is Commissioner Hamilton's question around the Council Office of Racial Equity. We have seen 10 years of data on racial disparities. We can anticipate more displacement with the current plan, assuming negative impacts on African Americans. How will Council modify the comprehensive plan to further racial equity?
Well, I want to say two things. First of all, we are looking at the language that the Office of Planning sent over with an eye toward whether it is sensitive enough to the issue of racial equity. It was filed with the council in April. And as you know, the nation has had some awakening since George Floyd's murder. And so the language was not as sensitive as it needs to be. So we are making some changes in that regard. That's the first point I want to make. The second point I want to make is that the plan is, how do I want to put this? The plan is a guide for, in terms of land use development or redevelopment. The part of that is how we ensure that communities of color and minority groups are not, and low income groups are not negatively impacted. But the latter is really a function of programming, and the plan is not a program. So, for example, we can provide economic assistance to small businesses east of the river. We can try to reduce the affordability burden for low income individuals, but we do that through tax relief or through rental assistance programs. So the programs are separate from the plan itself. So those are, that's the separate point I want to make, is that a lot of the racial equity work is going to be done through programs that are in legislation or that the mayor is authorized to do, which is outside of the plan itself.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is from Mrs. Pat Bishop, who is on the call.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Southwest Navy Yard and other areas in Ward 6 have already seen similar patterns of displacement and gentrification. Yet you have said that you will follow the council ward member for the comprehensive plan. Are you basically saying that Black residents can expect more of the same? Ward 6 council member Charles Allen has not fundamentally changed on his position on the development.
Well, there's a difference between my speaking to very specific issues and my speaking generally. So if there's a specific issue, you mentioned Black displacement gentrification in Southwest. I'm thinking of I think they're called the Sanitary Commission buildings that are on Half or First Street Southwest. I think that's all privately owned. If there's a disagreement between the ward member and the community, then I would have to make a decision where I am on that. That's a very specific proposal. But more generally speaking, the political reality in the council is that when the comprehensive plan goes through, and this will be the 5th or 6th time it's gone through the council since 1985, the council members tend to follow the ward member. If the ward member feels very strongly that Randall School should be designated I'm going to say medium density, commercial. I'm kind of making that up. It's unlikely that the members of the council are going to disagree. And that's just a political reality. So the emphasis of the community, if there is a flashpoint, the emphasis of the community should be on the ward member. I can propose, theoretically, I can propose anything I want to the council. But if the ward member disagrees and disagrees strongly, the members will probably go along with the ward member. So you need to focus on the ward member. Now it may be, I'll go back to what I said before, a specific issue. The council member wants Randall School to be high density commercial. I think that's a crazy idea. I can take him on and I'll have to evaluate whether I think I can win that argument, and I can take him on. So I'm speaking generally and specifically, and they're different.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to go to Mrs. Linda Brown, who's on the call. Oh, Linda was just on. Okay, Adone, you're next.
Good morning. So the data is clear that folks of African descent in DC have been harmed by gentrification, development, and a lack of protection by the hollow words of the comp plan. So what accountability mechanisms are in place to provide remedies and restitution for the harm? How much harm needs to take place before action is taken?
Well, this may sound like a weird answer to you, but say more about what the harm is. If the harm is that individuals move to Prince George's County, I'm not saying that's a wonderful thing, but I don't know how we would remedy that harm. If the harm is that the gentrification is driving up costs, and therefore it's very hard for particularly a senior who's lived in the neighborhood for 40 years and is on fixed income to remain there, then the remedy could be that we look at what we can do to reduce the costs, like taxes, on that individual. So it really depends on what the harm is. And I'm not trying to be evasive with this, because I get that this is a very serious concern. But it does depend upon what the harm is and then what remedies would be available. I'm a strong supporter in trying to ensure affordability for the diversity that we have in our city. And when I say diversity, I don't just mean race, but economic and age. So where there are burdens that are being placed on residents that work against that diversity, maintaining that diversity, I'm for sure interested in looking at what remedies are available. Usually the remedies are through economic mechanisms like what the tax burden is. Let me say something else though, because I think this question is in part a reaction to the development pressure for more residential. Where I see displacement occurring in communities, it's mostly with new residential. Our city was growing at about, I'm going to say 10 to 15,000 people a year until a few years ago. And the demand and therefore the pressure that it was putting on housing was huge. And the solution to that is to get more housing. I mean, I suppose we could say we don't want the city to grow in population, and that actually would have a counter negative effect on the district's ability to fund a lot of the programs that we're doing. So the solution has been to try to build more housing, affordable housing through the Housing Production Trust Fund and other strategies, as well as just more housing generally to try to reduce the pressure on existing affordable housing. It's a very difficult problem because we are tens of thousands of units behind where we need to be in terms of trying to meet the demand.
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioner Hamilton has joined. Commissioner Hamilton, we asked your first question, and this is your second question. Please feel free to highlight your first question as well. Rhonda, are you with us?
Yes. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Rhonda.
Hello.
Hello, Chairman Mendelson. The concern is that, and thank you for highlighting the question as well. I represent a near Buzzard Point residential within Southwest DC, as you're well aware of the community. And we're dealing with a lot with these industrial hazards, a lot of pollutions. There's a lot of building that's going on, cement activities. Pepco is installing a lot of transmission lines, which is putting a lot of radiation in our community, the monopoles, not to mention. So we have a community that has a lot of existing health disparities that is predominantly African American. And we are living beside one of the most contaminated sites, if not the most contaminated sites in the city within Buzzard Point. When we look at the residents who have died living beside these industrial hazards from so many illnesses such as cancer, heart disease, asthma, we have so many children who suffer with asthma and adults. The very area that we live in with all of these hazards is killing us and causing us to have so many chronic illnesses. And there are no safeguards that were put in place or implemented to protect our vulnerable community from the ill effects of living near these brownfields. And so I wanted to know within the comprehensive plan how it will address these environmental concerns and provide protections for our community, because we don't understand why within 2021 we are facing these industrial hazards, and why Buzzard Point, with the highest need of affordable housing, is being put online to be a high-end community with very limited opportunities to put affordable housing in. In our area as a transition point to Buzzard Point, and as the gateway to that area, we are being overlooked. Our health concerns are being swept under the rug, and no attention is being paid to the historic African American community that has lived here for generations. We just want the right that every citizen within the District of Columbia should have the right to live in a quality environment free of hazards, where our needs are addressed. We all know that the city is growing, is changing, there are different dynamics, but we just want a seat at the table to address these issues, to save our lives, because our life expectancy is deteriorating behind all of these hazards, and we're breathing in every day. And we live near the largest project in the District of Columbia's history, which is the South Capitol Street Bridge, which I will be meeting with them later today to discuss how we make sure that our community is protected. So I just, ask that you help us to address these concerns, because we're being hard hit by project after project after project, and our quality of life is deteriorating with each project.
I need to note that I'm out of time. I'll answer this and then we're going to have to wrap it up. So let me say that the situation at Buzzard Point, I think could be described as a classic example of what's called environmental racism. But let me remind you, the comprehensive plan is a plan, it's not a program. So the comprehensive plan guides future growth, but it's not actually a program to clean up a brownfield, for example. What the plan should be saying, and what I'm going to emphasize with regard to the environment, is that as we go forward with development in the future, we don't want to create more situations like the environmental racism that's existed at Buzzard Point. And that as there are changes in land use, that we need to be cleaning up or remedying some of this environmental damage. But I also want to note that, because when you mention Buzzard Point, I do think of this from time to time. I remember when Vince Gray, as mayor, sent down the legislation for the soccer stadium. And a big point he made in his transmittal letter was how the soccer stadium was going to transform the neighborhood. And if you think back to 2011, there certainly were some challenges around Syfax Gardens and is that the south? But I recognized, and nobody else talked about it, that when you bring in some economic activity like the soccer stadium, you're going to put economic pressure on the whole community. And that means driving up prices and attracting developers to redevelop, and exactly some of what you all are talking about in this call. Nobody thought about it, and nobody wanted to put any protections in place to try to protect the low-income residents in that area. I'm hopeful that we will be able to maintain that affordable housing, but that economic pressure comes from what everybody celebrates, which is economic activity like the soccer stadium. So at any rate, in the environmental element, there is discussion about avoiding environmental racism, and that as land is redeveloped, that we move to remedy the situation. Chris, I'm going to have to wrap this up. I'm now 5 minutes over.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We will continue. Julia, if you can stay on, we have a resident with one more question that we'd like to at least have her the opportunity to ask. And then if time permits, we can have other questions. I'd like for Linda to be able to ask her question.
So I'm going to leave.
Okay,
sorry, Linda. I'm going to leave. And if you could send us those slides that you showed at the beginning, I'm very much interested in looking at them more carefully.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for your time. I really appreciate it.
Okay, Linda, go ahead.
Well, actually, like I said, my question is pretty much in line with some of the things that Councilman Mendel just said about the plan and the things that we did not foresee when that plan was written. So a lot of this conversation is exactly about the things that we didn't foresee, and having a seat at the table now. What are we going to do, and how are we going to implement what we are seeing now? How is that? How are we going to move forward with that? Because we are living these conditions that we're speaking of. So our life is a day-to-day process. We don't have the luxury of moving forward with a lot of talk. We need to understand how are we going to implement these things in an equitable way. If we're talking about equity, where is the equity in these plans going forward? How do we as residents of the district have equity in these housing that, or these plans that you're proposing with these developers, where's the equity in our position or residents, how to keep them there? Where's our equity? How do we maintain our community in the face of what is happening now? And so as we begin to have all these discussions about equity, where do we discuss the equity of the residents that are living here? What is the equity in these developments that they're going to have? Where's their seat at the table permanently? That's my concern. And that's pretty much my question, is that if we're talking about all of these things, then where is the equity for us now moving forward?
Okay. Well, and I'm trying to, it's Miss Hamilton, correct?
Yeah, this is
No,
Brown. This is Miss Brown.
Linda,
Sorry. I had, no, that's
jumped
okay. I
right
just saw
into
Linda
this.
on here and I was,
Yes,
Um,
I'm sorry, I apologize.
no, that's
I jumped
okay.
right into this without giving you my name and who I am.
No, that's all right. And I really, I'm trying to think about how to respond both for the comprehensive plan, which is this big document that provides guidance at a high level. And I think one of the things that the chairman said that we're looking at is this plan came to us from the mayor and the Office of Planning. We have been reviewing it with the Office of Racial Equity to see what we can do to, I would say, first to acknowledge some of the context and the history that all of you have been discussing today. And I think also to see if in the guidance language, there are opportunities to be clearer about public participation, about how, particularly in the land use and zoning and development arena, how the agencies that actually advance and use these policies, how they could bring a racial equity lens to looking at the work that they're doing. The thing that I'm cognizant of is this is a big plan with policies, and as the chairman said, it's a guidance document, so it doesn't implement itself. There's no kind of budget for it, and there's no it's not the exact same thing as a law. So I think what would need to continue to happen is that as the comp plan, because your question is how does this move forward? And I think what we're trying to do is provide big picture guidance in the comp plan that would seek to have residents in the community more involved, to provide a closer and more consistent look at the issues that we've been talking about here in this call on equity. But I think, as the chairman also said, it's, where the rubber meets the road is when there are actually projects, and how those, or when there's a small area plan, and that is, we've provided the guidance, but it's, then it will be up to whether it's the Office of Planning or the Zoning Commission or other district agencies to use that guidance in how they work with all of you. That's, I think, the best answer I can give right now, but I'll keep trying if you want me to go from there.
Okay. All right, thank you, Julia. Of course, we only prepared for 20 minutes with Chairman Mendelson. I don't want to feel like you're being put on the spot. But we did have a question that Pastor Harrison raised around the historic designation of Second Union. Pastor Harrison, do you mind speaking to that issue?
While he's coming online, if I could say, I know, Chris, that in the last month or so, you've also sent comments through the Grassroots Planning Coalition regarding the environment element. And I haven't received a final, what I received from them was their kind of early draft, and I never received a final draft. So if there's a more up-to-date version, I do have what you sent previously, and I wouldn't mind seeing it again if you want to send it along.
In fact, we just posted the final to our website, so I'll send you that link.
Yeah,
when
it's kind of, yeah, but you know, I think the particular questions, and that gets to what some of the other folks on the call have talked about, I think would be helpful too.
Pastor Harrison?
Yes, I'm sorry, Chris, I was on mute. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good morning to all. I was mentioning to Chris earlier, about 3 years ago, Second Union Baptist Church petitioned the Office of Planning for historical designation for the church building. It was built in 1887, the first cornerstone, second cornerstone, 1953. We are the second church that has been occupied there at that location, 1107 Delaware Avenue Southwest, and we were denied historical certification for the reason that the Office of Planning said we, Second Union Baptist Church, had not been there as an entity for 50 years in that dwelling. And I thought it was the building and not the organization that was within the building. That's my question.
I would also add, Julia, that this is one of the few historic pre-urban renewal buildings in Southwest, and every other building has received historic designation that I'm aware of, at least. This was news to me. I had not known.
I have to say, I really don't know any of the details on that. I'm happy. Can you give me the address again? Just so you said it was on Delaware Avenue. It was
certainly 1107.
1107. Okay.
Delaware Avenue Southwest.
All right. I mean, this might be something, and I'm happy to call up the Office of Historic Preservation and get a better understanding, and maybe that's something that they can follow up and maybe, because I don't have any background on that request, so I can't say anything right now, but I'm happy to check with them and try and understand what the conditions were around that.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay. And do I have, should I go, Chris, through you, or do I have Mr. Harrison?
Yeah, I'll share Pastor Harrison's email.
Pastor Harrison, excuse me. Yes, that would be helpful. So I can get back to you on that.
Okay, great. All right, well, thank you all very much. If you are on this call and you have questions that you would like for us to forward on, please email me, and in my response to Chairman Mendelson and Julia, I will include those questions. But really, thank you all for your time. Part of my rush actually is I've got to go teach, and so thank you all very, very much, and especially my hat off to all of our speakers today. Okay.
Thank you very much. It was very much appreciated.
Thanks.
Inviting.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Okay, thank you.